The stagecoach rattled into Winnemucca, Nevada, on a scorching afternoon in July 1882, carrying a woman who would change everything Ryder Fletcher thought he knew about loneliness. And beside her sat a little girl with wide brown eyes who had not been mentioned in a single one of the letters they had exchanged over the past 6 months. Ryder stood outside the general store, his worn hat pulled low against the sun, watching as the coach came to a dusty halt. He had memorized Grace's letters, every carefully penned word describing her situation back in St. Louis, her need for a fresh start, her willingness to build a life with a stranger in the rugged Nevada territory. She had written about her skills as a seamstress, her love of cooking, her faith in God and hard work. Not once had she mentioned a child. The driver climbed down and opened the door, extending a weathered hand. A slender woman in a faded blue traveling dress stepped out, her auburn hair pinned neatly beneath a simple bonnet. Grace. She was prettier than he had imagined, with delicate features and green eyes that darted nervously around the unfamiliar street. Then those eyes found his, and something in her expression shifted between hope and terror. Before Ryder could step forward to introduce himself, a small figure emerged from the coach. A girl, no more than 5 years old, clutching a worn cloth doll to her chest. She had the same auburn hair as Grace, the same green eyes, though hers held less fear and more curiosity as she surveyed the dusty frontier town. Ryder felt his stomach drop. This changed everything. He had written to Grace proposing marriage because his ranch needed a woman's touch, because the silence of his homestead had grown too heavy after 3 years alone, because he was tired of eating his own terrible cooking and sleeping in a cold bed. He had imagined a partnership, maybe even affection given time. He had not imagined becoming a father. Grace saw him staring at the child and her face went pale. She placed a protective hand on the girl's shoulder and lifted her chin, preparing for rejection. Ryder could see it in the set of her jaw, the way she pulled her daughter closer. She had been rejected before. He walked toward them, his boots kicking up small clouds of dust. The closer he got, the more he could see the exhaustion etched into Grace's face, the threadbare quality of her dress despite its careful mending, the way her hands trembled slightly. The little girl watched him with solemn eyes, old beyond her years. "Miss Grace Vinson?" Ryder asked, removing his hat. "Yes." Her voice was steady despite the fear in her eyes. "You must be Mr. Fletcher." "Ryder, please." He glanced at the child. "And who might this be?" Grace swallowed hard. "This is my daughter, Lily. I know I should have told you in my letters. I was afraid that if you knew, you would not want me to come. I understand if you wish to send us back. I have a bit of money saved. It might be enough for passage, though I do not know where we would go." Ryder looked at the little girl again. Lily was watching him intently, her small face serious. She wore a dress that had been let down at the hem multiple times. Her shoes were worn thin, and the doll she held had been mended so many times it was hard to tell what color it had originally been. Yet there was something about her, a quiet dignity, that reminded him of his own sister at that age. "I reckon," Ryder said slowly, "that now I have 2 blessings instead of 1. Grace's eyes widened. "You are not angry, did not say that." He put his hat back on, adjusting it against the sun. "I do not appreciate being lied to, Miss Vinson. Honesty matters to me, especially between folks who plan to marry. But I can see you were in a hard place, and I can see you are a good mother protecting her child. That counts for something." Tears welled in Grace's eyes, but she blinked them back. "I am so sorry." "You have every right to be furious. I should have trusted you with the truth." Lily tugged on her mother's sleeve. "Mama, is this the man you are going to marry?" Grace looked down at her daughter, then back at Ryder. That depends on whether he still wants to marry me after my deception." Ryder considered them both. He had been alone for so long, and yes, this was not what he had expected. But life on the frontier rarely went according to plan. You either adapted or you failed, and Ryder Fletcher was not in the habit of failing. "The circuit preacher comes through town every 2 weeks," he said. "He was here yesterday, so we have 13 days to figure out if this arrangement will work for all of us. I have a spare room at the ranch. You and Lily can stay there. You will do the cooking and mending like we agreed, and I will provide for you both. At the end of those 13 days, if you still want to marry me and I still want to marry you, we will make it legal when the preacher returns. If not, I will pay for your passage to wherever you want to go. Fair?" Grace nodded quickly. "More than fair, Mr. Fletcher. Thank you." "Ryder," he corrected again. He looked at Lily. "You like horses, Miss Lily." The little girl's eyes lit up for the first time. "I have never met a real horse before." "Well, we have got 6 of them at the ranch, plus a few cattle and some chickens. Reckon you will get to meet all of them real soon." He gestured to the driver, who was unloading 2 battered trunks from the coach. "That all your belongings?" "Yes," Grace said quietly. Everything they owned fit in 2 trunks. Ryder felt something tighten in his chest. Whatever had driven Grace to answer his advertisement, whatever life she had left behind in St. Louis, it had not been an easy one. He arranged for the trunks to be loaded onto his wagon, then helped Grace and Lily climb up onto the bench seat. The ranch was an hour outside of town, following a dusty road that cut through scrubland dotted with sagebrush and the occasional Joshua tree. As they rode, Ryder pointed out landmarks. The creek where he got water, the rocky outcropping where rattlesnakes liked to sun themselves, the property line where his land began. Lily asked questions in a high, clear voice. Why was the ground so brown? Where were all the trees? Did rattlesnakes really bite people? Grace tried to shush her, but Ryder waved off her concerns. "Curious mind is a good thing," he said. "Out here, asking questions can keep you alive." The ranch house came into view as the sun began its descent toward the horizon. It was a modest structure, wood frame with a covered porch, built by Ryder's own hands 3 years ago when he had staked his claim to this land. There was a barn, a corral, and a chicken coop. Nothing fancy, but it was solid and well maintained. Grace studied it all with careful eyes. "It is a good home. It needs work," Ryder admitted. "I am better with animals than I am with keeping a house. I am afraid it has gotten pretty rough inside." That turned out to be an understatement. When they entered, Grace tried to hide her dismay, but Ryder could see it. Dishes were piled in the wash basin. Dust covered every surface. His clothes were draped over chairs. The floor had not been swept in weeks. "I will start cleaning tomorrow," Grace said faintly. "We will start cleaning tomorrow," Ryder corrected. "I made the mess. I will help fix it." He showed them to the spare room, which was small but clean, with a single bed and a dresser. "I know it is tight quarters for 2, but it is the best I have got." "We have shared smaller spaces," Grace assured him. "This is wonderful, thank you." Lily was already exploring, running her hand over the quilt on the bed. "Mama, there is a real window." Grace's face flushed with embarrassment, but Ryder pretended not to notice. Instead, he went to the kitchen and started a fire in the stove. "I've got some beans and salt pork." "Not much, but it will make a decent supper. Tomorrow we can go into town for proper supplies." "Let me cook," Grace said quickly. "Please, it is the least I can do." She moved around the unfamiliar kitchen with practiced efficiency. And within an hour, the small house smelled better than it had in months. The beans were seasoned with herbs she had brought in her trunk, the salt pork fried crisp, and she had even managed to make cornbread in his temperamental oven. They ate at the small table, Lily chattering about the journey from St. Louis while Grace occasionally interjected with gentle corrections. Ryder learned that they had lived in a boarding house, that Grace had worked as a seamstress for a wealthy family, until the lady of the house had accused her of theft to avoid paying what she owed. That Grace had been unable to find other work because of the false accusation, that she had pawned nearly everything she owned to keep Lily fed. "I saw your advertisement in the newspaper," Grace said quietly, not meeting his eyes. "It seemed like Providence. A chance to start over somewhere no one knew my supposed shame." "And Lily's father?" Ryder asked, then immediately regretted the question when he saw Grace's face close off. "Dead," she said shortly. "He died before she was born." Lily piped up. "Mama says he was a good man who would have loved me." "I am sure he would have," Ryder said gently. He did not press further. Whatever Grace's past held, she would share it if and when she was ready. After supper, Grace insisted on washing the dishes while Ryder brought in their trunks. He set them in the spare room and left mother and daughter to settle in. Through the thin walls, he could hear Grace reading to Lily in a soft voice, some story about a princess and a pea. The sound filled the empty spaces of his house in a way he had not expected. He sat on the porch as the stars came out, one by one, bright against the vast Nevada sky. A coyote called in the distance. The horses shifted in the barn. Everything was familiar, yet everything had changed. This morning he had been alone. Tonight there were two people sleeping under his roof, depending on him, trusting him despite every reason they had not to. "Now I have two blessings," he murmured to himself again, testing the words. They felt true in a way that surprised him. The next morning, Ryder woke before dawn as was his habit. He dressed quietly and stepped outside to do his chores, but when he returned to the house, he found Grace already up, the kitchen warm with a fire, coffee brewing on the stove. "You did not have to wake so early," he said. "I am used to it." She handed him a cup of coffee, their fingers brushing briefly. "I thought you might appreciate a hot breakfast before you start your work." "I appreciate it very much." They worked side by side that morning, falling into an easy rhythm. Grace cooked while Ryder mucked out stalls. She swept and dusted while he mended a fence. Lily followed him around like a curious shadow, asking endless questions about ranch life. By afternoon, the house was transformed, clean and organized in a way it had not been since Ryder had built it. Over the next few days, they settled into a routine. Ryder taught Lily about the animals, showing her how to collect eggs from the chickens, how to brush the horses gently, how to spot signs of rattlesnakes. Grace threw herself into making the house a home, sewing curtains from fabric she found in her trunk, planting a small herb garden near the kitchen door, filling the rooms with the smell of fresh bread and stew. On the fourth day, they took the wagon into Winnemucca for supplies. Grace made a list of what she needed, careful to keep it modest, but Ryder added extras. Good fabric for new dresses for both her and Lily. A tin of peppermints, a book of fairy tales he spotted in the general store. "You do not need to spend so much on us," Grace protested. "If you are going to be my wife, you need proper clothes," Ryder said. "And every child should have peppermints and stories." At the general store, they ran into Martha Brennan, the banker's wife and the closest thing Winnemucca had to high society. She looked Grace up and down with barely concealed disdain. "So this is the mail-order bride," Martha said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "How convenient that you forgot to mention your little bastard in your letters." Grace flinched as if struck. Lily, who had been looking at the peppermint tin, went very still. Ryder stepped between them, his voice cold. "Mrs. Brennan, you will watch your tongue. This is my future wife and her daughter, and they deserve respect." "Respect," Martha laughed. For a woman who trapped you with her lies. Everyone in town is talking about it, Ryder. How she deceived you. You do not have to go through with this farce of a marriage. The only farce is you pretending to be a Christian woman while speaking with such cruelty, Ryder said. Grace and I are getting married when the preacher comes, and Lily will be my daughter in every way that matters. If that offends your delicate sensibilities, I suggest you take your business elsewhere. Martha's face turned crimson. She gathered her skirts and swept out of the store, nose in the air. The shopkeeper, old Mr. Hendricks, chuckled from behind his counter. "About time someone put that woman in her place," he said. "Miss Vinson, do not pay her any mind. Most folks in this town judge people by their character, not their past." Grace's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "Thank you, Mr. Hendricks, and thank you, Ryder." Outside, as they loaded supplies into the wagon, Lily tugged on Ryder's sleeve. "Mr. Fletcher, what is a bastard?" Ryder knelt down to her level. "It is an ugly word mean people used to hurt children who did nothing wrong. You are not defined by the circumstances of your birth, Lily. You are smart and brave and kind, and that is what matters. Mama says my papa would have married her if he had not died." "I believe that," Ryder said. "And soon you will have a papa again if that is all right with you." Lily considered this seriously. "Will I call you Papa?" Ryder glanced at Grace, who was watching them with tears streaming down her face. "You can call me whatever feels right to you." "I think I would like to call you Papa," Lily decided. "You are nice to Mama and you let me help with the chickens." Something in Ryder's chest cracked open. He had not expected this, had not expected to care so much so quickly. "Then Papa it is." That night, after Lily was asleep, Grace and Ryder sat on the porch together watching the stars. "You did not have to defend me today," Grace said quietly. "Mrs. Brennan was right. I did deceive you." "She was cruel, and I do not tolerate cruelty," Ryder said. "Especially not toward people I care about." Grace looked at him, surprised. "You care about us." "I reckon I do." He met her gaze. "These past few days, having you and Lily here, it has made this place feel like a real home for the first time. I know we barely know each other, but I want to try, Grace. I want to make this work." "So do I," she whispered. "More than I can say." He reached over and took her hand. It was small and work-roughened, and it fit perfectly in his. They sat like that for a long time, hand in hand under the stars, while the desert night sang around them. The days turned into a week, then more. Ryder found himself looking forward to coming in from the fields and finding Grace in the kitchen, her hair escaping from its pins as she stirred a pot on the stove. He loved hearing Lily's laughter as she chased chickens around the yard. He loved the way Grace hummed while she sewed, the way she bit her lip when she was concentrating. One evening, he came in to find Grace struggling to reach a high shelf in the kitchen. Without thinking, he stepped behind her, his hands settling on her waist as he lifted her slightly so she could grab what she needed. When he set her down, she turned in the circle of his arms, her face inches from his. "Thank you," she breathed. "Grace," he said, and then he could not remember what he had meant to say because she was looking at him with such warmth, such hope, and he found himself lowering his head, giving her time to pull away. She did not pull away. Their first kiss was gentle, tentative, a question and an answer all at once. When they parted, Grace was blushing, but she was smiling too. "I have been wanting to do that," Ryder admitted. "I have been hoping you would," Grace replied. From that moment, something shifted between them. The partnership they had been building deepened into something more. Ryder found excuses to touch her, a hand on the small of her back, fingers brushing as they passed dishes at dinner. Grace started meeting his eyes more often, holding his gaze, letting him see the affection growing there. They talked late into the evenings after Lily was asleep, sharing stories from their pasts. Ryder told her about his family back in Missouri, how he had left after his parents died to make his own way, how he had worked as a ranch hand for years before saving enough to buy this land, how lonely it had been, building a life with no one to share it. Grace told him about growing up poor in St. Louis, about meeting Lily's father when she was 17. James had been a steamboat worker, handsome and charming. They had planned to marry, but he had been killed in a boiler explosion before they could. She had been left alone, pregnant, and shunned by society. "I loved him," Grace said, "but I was young and foolish. I did not realize how hard life would be as an unwed mother." "You survived," Ryder pointed out. "You kept Lily safe and loved. That takes strength." "I am tired of just surviving," Grace confessed. "I want to live. I want to build something lasting. I want to give Lily a real home with a father who loves her." "She has got that," Ryder said. "I know it has only been days, but that little girl has wrapped herself around my heart. And so have you, if I am being honest." Grace reached for his hand. "I am falling in love with you, Ryder Fletcher." "Good," he said, pulling her close. "Because I am already in love with you, Grace Vinson." They kissed again, deeper this time, full of promise and passion. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathless. "9 more days until the preacher comes," Grace said. "9 days," Ryder agreed. "And then you will be Grace Fletcher." The name sounded right. It sounded like home. But the next morning brought trouble. Ryder was out checking the fence line when he heard a commotion from the house. He ran back to find a man on horseback in front of the porch, Grace standing in the doorway with Lily hidden behind her skirts. The man was well-dressed, older, with silver threading through his dark hair. He sat his horse with the ease of someone used to being obeyed. "I told you, you are not welcome here," Grace was saying, her voice shaking with fury and fear. "Grace, be reasonable," the man said. "You cannot raise a child in this God-forsaken wilderness. Come back to St. Louis. I will set you up in a proper house, make sure Lily has the best schools." "And what would you want in return, Charles?" Grace asked coldly. Ryder approached, and the man turned his attention to him. "You must be the rancher fool enough to take on another man's leavings." Ryder felt anger flash through him, but he kept his voice level. "I am Ryder Fletcher, and this is my land. State your business or leave." "Charles Worthington," the man said. "I am Grace's former employer." "Well, I was my wife's employer. I am here to save her from making a terrible mistake." "The only mistake I made was working for your wife," Grace said. "You need to leave, Charles." Understanding dawned on Ryder. This was the man whose wife had accused Grace of theft. And from the way Charles was looking at Grace, from the implications in his words, Ryder could guess at the real reason Grace had been driven from her position. "You tried to force yourself on her," Ryder said flatly. "She refused, and your wife punished her for it." Charles's face hardened. "You know nothing about it." "I know enough. You need to leave. Now." "I am offering her a decent life," Charles insisted. "You are offering her what? Hard labor and poverty in the middle of nowhere." "I am offering her respect, honesty, and love," Ryder said. "Things you clearly know nothing about. Last chance, Worthington. Ride away or I will help you leave." Charles looked between them, then at Grace. "You would choose this?" "A nobody rancher in a life of struggle. I choose freedom," Grace said. "I choose dignity. I choose Ryder. Now get off our land." Charles jerked his horse's reins. "You will regret this, Grace. When you are old and worn out before your time, when that little bastard of yours is working her fingers to the bone, you will remember I offered you better." Ryder took a step forward, his hand moving to the gun at his hip. "Leave. Now." Charles sneered but turned his horse and rode away. They watched until he was out of sight. Grace was shaking. Ryder pulled her into his arms and she collapsed against his chest. "I am so sorry," she gasped. I did not think he would follow me here. I did not think he cared enough. It is not about caring, Ryder said grimly. It is about control. Men like him do not like it when they do not get their way. Lily peeked out from behind the door. Is the bad man gone? He is gone, sweetheart, Grace said, pulling herself together. She knelt down and hugged her daughter. He will not hurt us. But Ryder was not so sure. He had seen the look in Charles Worthington's eyes. The man was used to getting what he wanted, and he was not the type to give up easily. Over the next few days, Ryder made sure someone was always at the house. When he had to check on the far pastures, he brought Grace and Lily with him. He taught Grace how to shoot his spare rifle just in case. You really think he will come back? Grace asked as she practiced aiming at tin cans set up on fence posts. Better to be prepared and wrong than unprepared and sorry, Ryder said. Grace proved to be a decent shot. After an hour of practice, she could hit the cans more often than not. James taught me, she said, before he died. He said a woman alone in the world needed to know how to protect herself. Her voice grew quiet. I wish I had listened better. Maybe things would have been different. You did the best you could, Ryder assured her. You are still doing the best you can. That is all any of us can do. The day before the preacher was due to arrive, Ryder rode into town for supplies and to confirm the wedding would take place as planned. He left Grace and Lily at the ranch, the rifle loaded and within easy reach. In Winnemucca, he found the preacher, a kindly older man named Reverend Samuel Potter, who confirmed he would be happy to perform the ceremony the next afternoon. I have heard talk about your bride, the Reverend said gently, some of it unkind. But I have also heard about how you defended her against Martha Brennan and how you have taken her daughter as your own. That speaks well of your character, son. Grace is a good woman who had some bad luck, Ryder said. She deserves happiness. I believe you are right, the Reverend agreed. I will see you tomorrow. Ryder was loading supplies into his wagon when he overheard two men talking outside the saloon. Worthington is still in town, one was saying, staying at the hotel. He has been asking questions about Fletcher about the land. What kind of questions? The other asked. Whether Fletcher's claim is solid, whether there is any way to challenge it. Seems like he wants that woman back, something fierce. Ryder's blood ran cold. He finished loading quickly and headed back to the ranch, pushing the horses harder than he usually would. He found everything quiet when he arrived, Grace in the garden with Lily both safe. Relief flooded through him. Is everything all right? Grace asked, seeing his face. Worthington is still in town, Ryder said. I do not trust him. That night, Ryder barely slept. He sat on the porch with his rifle across his knees, watching the shadows starting at every sound. Grace came out around midnight with a blanket and a cup of coffee. You should rest, she said. Tomorrow is our wedding day. I will rest when I know you are safe, Ryder replied. Grace sat beside him, wrapping the blanket around both their shoulders. I am safe. You make me feel safer than I have felt in years. Grace, if anything happened to you or Lily because of me, because you came here. Stop, she interrupted. Charles Worthington is not your fault. He is not my fault either. He is a powerful man used to taking what he wants, and for once someone is telling him no. That enraged him, but it is his problem, not ours. You are brave, Ryder said. I am terrified, Grace admitted, but I am also hopeful for the first time in so long. Tomorrow I get to marry a man I love, a man who loves my daughter. That is worth fighting for. They sat together through the dark hours, talking softly, sharing warmth. As dawn broke over the desert, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Ryder felt Grace's head grow heavy on his shoulder. She had fallen asleep, trusting him to keep watch. He pressed a kiss to her hair and whispered, I will always protect you, Grace. Always. The wedding was planned for 2 in the afternoon at the small church in Winnemucca. Grace spent the morning making herself and Lily ready, putting on the best dress she owned, a soft green that brought out her eyes. Lily wore a new dress Ryder had bought, white with pink flowers, and she spun in circles, delighted with how it swirled. "Mama, you look like a princess," Lily declared. "And you look like a little fairy," Grace replied, adjusting her daughter's ribbon. Ryder wore his best suit, brushed and pressed. He hitched the horses to the wagon and helped his soon-to-be wife and daughter climb aboard. The ride into town was full of excitement and nerves. But as they approached Winnemucca, they saw smoke rising from the direction of the church. "No," Grace breathed. Ryder pushed the horses faster. They arrived to find the church burning, flames consuming the small wooden structure. Townspeople had formed a bucket brigade, but it was clear the building was lost. Reverend Potter stood watching his church burn, soot on his face, grief in his eyes. "What happened?" Ryder demanded. "I do not know," the Reverend said. "I was inside preparing for your ceremony when I smelled smoke. By the time I got outside, the flames were everywhere. Someone set this fire deliberately. I found oil-soaked rags near the door." Ryder's jaw clenched. He knew without proof who was responsible. "Can you still marry us?" Grace asked, her voice small. The Reverend looked at the burning building, then at Grace and Ryder. "A marriage is about the vows, not the building. If you still want to wed, I can perform the ceremony right here, right now." "Yes," Grace and Ryder said together. So there, in the dusty street of Winnemucca, with smoke billowing behind them and townspeople as witnesses, Reverend Potter married Ryder Fletcher and Grace Vinson. They spoke their vows in voices that did not waver, promising to love and honor each other through whatever trials came. When the Reverend pronounced them husband and wife, Ryder kissed Grace thoroughly, not caring who watched. She was his now, and he was hers. Lily tugged on Ryder's sleeve. "Does this mean you are really my papa now?" "It means I am really your papa," Ryder confirmed, scooping her up in his arms. "Now and always." The small crowd cheered, and several women came forward to congratulate them. Even Mr. Hendricks from the general store shook Ryder's hand and slipped Lily a peppermint, but Martha Brennan stood apart, her face sour. "Mark my words, this will end badly. A marriage born of deception cannot prosper." Before Ryder could respond, Charles Worthington rode up, his expression one of barely contained fury. He looked at Grace, then at the burning church, then back at Grace. "You went through with it," he said. "I did," Grace replied, holding up her hand to show the simple gold band Ryder had placed there. "I am Grace Fletcher now, and you have no claim on me." "That church burning is quite the coincidence," Ryder said coldly. "You would not happen to know anything about that, would you, Worthington?" "I have no idea what you are implying," Charles said, but there was a flicker of something in his eyes. Satisfaction, maybe. Or malice. Sheriff Tom Brennan, Martha's husband, approached. He was a weak man who let his wife rule him, but he took his job seriously enough when pressed. "Mr. Worthington, I am going to need you to answer some questions about the fire," the sheriff said. "I was at the hotel all morning," Charles said smoothly. "You can ask the proprietor." "I will do that," the sheriff said, "but several people saw your horse tied behind the church earlier." "Seemed odd since you are not a religious man." Charles's face darkened. "I went for a ride. There is no law against that." "There is a law against arson," the sheriff said. "If I find evidence linking you to this fire, you will hang." For the first time, Charles looked uncertain. "You have no proof." "Not yet," the sheriff agreed, "but I will be looking. In the meantime, I suggest you leave Winnemucca today." Charles looked at Grace one last time. "You could have had everything. I would have given you the world. You would have made me your mistress and treated my daughter with contempt," Grace said. "Ryder gives me respect, partnership, and love. That is worth more than all the money in the world." Charles turned his horse and rode away. They watched him go, and Ryder felt Grace relax against his side. "Is it over?" she asked. "It is over," Ryder confirmed. The sheriff tipped his hat to them. "Congratulations on your marriage, Mr. and Mrs. Fletcher. I will make sure Worthington gets on the next stage east. If he knows what is good for him, he will not come back." Over the following weeks, life settled into a new rhythm. Grace threw herself into making the ranch a true home. She sewed curtains for every window, planted flowers around the porch, organized the barn and the kitchen with ruthless efficiency. Lily thrived in the open spaces, losing the pinched, hungry look she had arrived with. She followed Ryder everywhere, learning about the animals and the land, asking her endless questions. Ryder had never been happier. Coming home to Grace's smile, to Lily's chatter, to the warmth of a family felt like a dream he was afraid to wake from. And at night, when he held Grace in his arms in the marriage bed they now shared, when she whispered her love for him in the darkness, he knew he had found something precious beyond measure. One evening, about 6 weeks after the wedding, Grace met him at the door with news. "I am with child," she said, her face glowing. "The doctor confirmed it today when we went to town." Ryder let out a whoop of joy and lifted her off her feet, spinning her around. "Truly, truly," she laughed. "You are going to be a father." "I am already a father," he said, setting her down gently and gesturing to where Lily was playing with the barn cat. "But I am glad to be giving Lily a brother or sister." "When?" "Early spring, the doctor thinks." They told Lily at dinner, and the little girl's eyes went wide. "A baby, a real baby." "A real baby," Grace confirmed. "You will be a big sister." "Will it be a boy or a girl?" Lily asked. "We will not know until the baby arrives," Ryder said. "But either way, we will love it just like we love you." Lily considered this, then nodded, satisfied. "I will teach the baby everything I know about chickens." Grace laughed, the sound bright and free. Ryder looked at his family gathered around the dinner table, his wife, his daughter, and the child yet to come, and felt his heart overflow with gratitude. The months passed quickly. Fall arrived, turning the desert landscape into shades of gold and rust. Grace's belly grew round with their child. Ryder built a cradle from pine wood, sanding it smooth and carefully painting it white. Lily helped Grace sew baby clothes, her stitches crooked but earnest. Winter came, cold and harsh. Snow dusted the mountains in the distance. Ryder made sure the house was sealed tight against the wind, that they had plenty of firewood stacked, that the animals were sheltered. Grace moved more slowly now, one hand always resting on her swollen belly. But she was radiant, glowing with health and happiness. She and Lily would sit by the fire in the evenings, sewing or reading, while Ryder whittled small toys for the coming baby. "Are you happy?" Grace asked him one night as they lay in bed, her head on his chest. "Happier than I ever thought possible," Ryder replied. "You and Lily, this baby, you have given me everything I did not know I needed." "You saved us," Grace said. "When we got off that stagecoach, we had nothing. No home, no future, no hope. You gave us all of that." "You saved me right back," Ryder said. "I was just existing before you came. Now I am living." The baby came on a bright March morning. Ryder rode hard to town to fetch the doctor, leaving Lily with their neighbor, Mrs. Hendricks, who had come to help with the birth. By the time he returned with Dr. Walsh, Grace was in hard labor. Ryder paced the porch, unable to sit still, starting at every sound from the house. It seemed to take forever, though the doctor later told him it had been a relatively quick birth for a first child with Ryder. Finally, the baby's cry split the air, strong and healthy. Dr. Walsh emerged smiling. "You have a son, Mr. Fletcher, a big, healthy boy. Your wife did wonderfully." Ryder practically ran into the house. Grace lay in their bed, exhausted but smiling, holding a bundle wrapped in a soft blanket. She looked up as he entered, and her smile grew wider. "Come meet your son," she said. Ryder approached carefully, in awe. Grace pulled back the blanket to reveal a red-faced baby with a shock of dark hair and tiny, waving fists. The baby's eyes were squeezed shut, and he was making small, snuffling sounds. "He is perfect," Ryder breathed. "We need to name him," Grace said. They had discussed names for months, debating options. But now, looking at his son, Ryder knew. "James," he said. "After your first love. Because without him, without the path that brought you to me, this moment would not exist. We can call him James if you are agreeable." Tears streamed down Grace's face. "You would do that. Honor him that way. He gave you Lily. And Lily is my daughter as surely as if I had fathered her myself. It seems right to honor his memory." "James Ryder Fletcher," Grace said, testing the name. "It is perfect." When they brought Lily home later that day, she was fascinated by her baby brother. She stood by the cradle, watching him sleep with solemn eyes. "He is so small," she whispered. "You were that small once," Grace told her. "Can I hold him?" Ryder carefully placed the baby in Lily's arms, supporting them both. She looked down at James with such tenderness that Ryder felt his throat tighten. "I will always protect you, little brother," Lily promised. "And I will teach you everything about chickens and horses and how to be brave." The years that followed were good ones. The ranch prospered. Ryder expanded his herd, built a larger barn, and hired a hand to help with the work. Grace became known throughout the county for her sewing skills, taking in mending and making dresses for the women of Winnemucca. The extra money allowed them to improve the house, adding another bedroom and a proper parlor. Lily grew tall and clever, a mirror of her mother. She excelled at school and loved helping on the ranch. She had Ryder's way with animals and Grace's quick mind. By the time she was 10, she could ride as well as any cowboy and read better than most adults. James was a happy, active boy, always laughing, always getting into mischief. He worshipped Lily, following her everywhere, begging to be included in her adventures. And 2 years after James, Grace gave birth to a daughter they named Rose. She had Grace's auburn hair and Ryder's gray eyes, and she had her father wrapped around her tiny finger from the moment she was born. The ranch house was always full of noise and laughter, of children's games and family meals. Ryder would often stop in the middle of his work just to watch his family, to marvel at how his life had turned out. One summer evening when Lily was 14, she came to Ryder as he was checking on a new calf. "Papa, can I ask you something?" "Anything, sweetheart." "You remember the day Mama and I arrived, when you said you had 2 blessings?" Ryder smiled at the memory. "I remember. Why do you ask?" "I have always wondered if you meant it, if you were disappointed that Mama had not told you about me." Ryder set down his tools and gave Lily his full attention. She was at that awkward age, not quite child but not yet woman, full of questions and doubts. "Come here," he said, leading her to a fence rail where they could sit. "When your mama stepped off that stagecoach and I saw you beside her, I was surprised. I will not lie about that. But disappointed. Never. Lily, you have been a blessing every single day since. Watching you grow, teaching you about the ranch, seeing your mother's strength and kindness reflected in you, it has been one of the great joys of my life." "But I am not really your daughter," Lily said quietly. "Not by blood." "Blood does not make a family," Ryder said firmly. "Love makes a family. I chose to be your father that first day, and I have chosen it every day since. You are my daughter, Lily, as much as James and Rose. Do you understand?" Lily nodded, tears in her eyes. "I love you, Papa. I love you too, sweet girl. Always." They sat together watching the sun set, father and daughter, connected not by blood but by something stronger. That night, Ryder told Grace about the conversation. "She is growing up," Grace said wistfully. "Soon she will be a woman wanting her own life." "Not too soon, I hope," Ryder said. "I am not ready to lose her to some young cowboy yet," Grace laughed. "You will never be ready, but when the time comes, we will let her go with our blessing, knowing we raised her to be strong and smart and kind." "Like her mother," Ryder said, pulling Grace close. "Like her father," Grace countered. More years passed. Lily fell in love with the schoolteacher's son, a serious young man named Daniel who loved books as much as she did. They married when Lily was 19, and Ryder walked her down the aisle with pride and tears in his eyes. A year later, she made him a grandfather, and holding that baby girl, seeing his daughter as a mother herself, Ryder understood the full circle of life in a way he never had before. James grew into a fine rancher, taking over more of the work as Ryder aged. He had his father's skill with horses and his mother's head for numbers. At 16, he could manage the ranch as well as any grown man. Rose was their wild child, always chasing adventure, always asking why things had to be a certain way. She kept them young, kept them laughing, kept them on their toes. Through it all, Ryder and Grace's love deepened. They had built a life together from nothing, overcome hardship and fear, created a family and a home. They knew each other's thoughts, finished each other's sentences, communicated with a glance across a crowded room. On their 25th wedding anniversary, Ryder took Grace back to the spot where the old church had burned, where they had spoken their vows in the dusty street. A new church had been built, bigger and better than the first. "You ever regret it?" Ryder asked. "Answering my advertisement, coming all this way?" Grace looked at him like he was crazy. "Regret the best decision I ever made. Regret finding love and building a life with you. Ryder Fletcher, you are my heart. You have been since the day you said we had two blessings. I knew then that I had found a good man, and every day since has proven me right." "I love you, Grace Fletcher," Ryder said. "More today than yesterday and less than I will tomorrow." "I love you too," Grace replied. "Thank you for taking a chance on a desperate woman with a secret. Thank you for loving my daughter. Thank you for building this beautiful life with me." They kissed there in the shadow of the church, older now but no less in love than they had been as new bride and groom. Years continued to flow like water. Ryder's hair turned silver. Grace's face gained lines around her eyes from years of smiling. They became grandparents many times over as their children married and had families of their own. The ranch was passed to James, who ran it with his father's wisdom and his mother's care. Lily became a teacher herself, educating a new generation of children in Winnemucca. Rose married a surveyor and moved to Carson City, but she visited often, filling the house with her energy and laughter. Ryder and Grace grew old together, sitting on the porch in rocking chairs Ryder had built, watching the sun set over the land they had tamed together. Their hands were always linked, their love as strong as ever. "You remember that first night?" Grace asked one evening. "When you sat on this porch with your rifle, keeping watch?" "I remember," Ryder said. "I was so afraid of losing you before I even had you." "You never lost me," Grace said. "Not for a single day." "Best decision I ever made, putting that advertisement in the paper," Ryder mused. "Best decision I ever made, answering it," Grace agreed. They sat in comfortable silence, two people who had weathered life's storms together and come out stronger for it. Around them, the desert was alive with the sounds of evening. Somewhere in the distance, coyotes called. The horses nickered in the barn. Inside the house, they could hear their grandchildren playing, visiting for the weekend. "Two blessings," Ryder said softly. "That is what I said that first day. Turns out I got a whole lot more than two." "We both did," Grace said, squeezing his hand. As the stars began to appear one by one in the vast Nevada sky, Ryder Fletcher looked at his life and found it good. He had built something lasting with Grace, a legacy of love that would continue long after they were gone. Their children and grandchildren carried their values, their strength, their devotion to family. The mail-order bride who had arrived with a secret had become the center of his world. The little girl who had stepped off that stagecoach with fearful eyes had grown into a woman of grace and dignity, a mother and teacher who touched countless lives. And Ryder, the lonely rancher who had simply wanted someone to share his life with, had found love beyond his wildest dreams. As they rose to go inside, Grace turned to Ryder one more time. "Have I told you today that I love you?" "Only 3 or 4 times," Ryder replied with a smile, "but I never get tired of hearing it. I love you, Ryder Fletcher, today, tomorrow, and all the days after that." "I love you too, Grace Fletcher, my blessing, my heart, my home." They walked inside together, hand in hand, to the warmth and light of the family they had created. Behind them, the desert stretched endless under the stars, beautiful and unforgiving and full of promise, just like the life they had built together. The ranch would stand for generations, a testament to what two people could build when they chose love over fear, when they met hardship with courage, when they opened their hearts to the blessings life offered. And every Fletcher who came after would know the story of how it all began, with a stagecoach arriving in Winnemucca carrying a desperate woman, a frightened child, and the hope for something better. Ryder and Grace Fletcher lived to see their 50th wedding anniversary, surrounded by children and grandchildren, and even a few great-grandchildren. The celebration was held at the ranch, with tables set up in the yard, music and dancing, and enough food to feed half of Winnemucca. Lily stood to make a toast, her own children grown now, her hair threaded with gray. 50 years ago, my mother and I stepped off a stagecoach into the unknown. We had nothing but each other and a hope that the man who had sent for my mother would be kind. Papa Ryder was more than kind. He was everything we needed and so much more. He showed me that family is not just blood, it is choice and love and showing up every day. Thank you, Papa, for choosing us. Thank you, Mama, for being brave enough to take that chance. Your love has been an example to all of us, and we are better for it." There was not a dry eye in the gathering as everyone raised their glasses to the couple who had started it all. Later, when the party was winding down and the sun was setting in shades of orange and purple, Ryder and Grace slipped away to the porch, their favorite spot, the place where they had shared so many conversations over the years. 50 years, Grace marveled. It has gone so fast. "And yet it feels like I have known you forever," Ryder said. "Like you were always meant to be here." "I was," Grace said simply. "We were always meant to find each other, Ryder. Across all that distance, through all those trials, we were meant to be." "I believe that too," Ryder agreed. They sat in their rocking chairs, hands linked, watching the last light fade from the sky. They had built a good life, raised good children, created a legacy of love that would endure. They had faced challenges and overcome them together. They had known joy and sorrow, triumph and loss, and through it all their love had been the constant. As the stars appeared, the same stars that had witnessed their first tentative steps toward love all those years ago, Grace leaned her head on Ryder's shoulder. "No regrets?" she asked. "Not a single one," Ryder replied. "You?" "Only that we did not have more time," Grace said, "but I will take what we have been given and be grateful for every moment." "Every moment," Ryder echoed. They stayed there long after everyone else had gone home or gone to bed. Two people who had found each other against all odds, who had built a life of meaning and purpose, who had loved deeply and completely. In the house behind them, their family slept, secure in the knowledge that they were loved and valued. The ranch around them stood strong, a testament to hard work and dedication. And the desert stretched on forever, wild and beautiful and free. Ryder Fletcher and Grace Vinson Fletcher had started with nothing but hope and a willingness to try. They had ended with everything that mattered: love, family, a legacy that would outlive them both. They had faced down those who would tear them apart, weathered storms both literal and figurative, and emerged victorious. Their story was one of redemption and second chances, of love found in unexpected places, of two blessings that multiplied into countless more. It was a story of the Wild West at its finest, harsh but honest, challenging but rewarding, full of people trying to build something lasting in an untamed land. And at the heart of it all was love, simple and pure and strong enough to overcome anything. As the night deepened and the chill set in, they finally rose to go inside. Ryder helped Grace to her feet, his movements slower now but still gentle, still caring. They walked into the house together, closing the door on another day, another year, another chapter in their ongoing story. The ranch would continue. Their children and grandchildren would carry on their work, their values, their commitment to family and land. New stories would be written, new chapters would unfold. But the foundation would always be Ryder and Grace, the mail-order bride and the rancher who had chosen love, who had said yes to two blessings and received a lifetime of them in return. In the end, that was all that mattered. Not the hardships they had faced, not the people who had doubted them, not the obstacles they had overcome. What mattered was the love they had shared, the family they had created, the life they had built together. And as they settled into bed that night, 50 years after speaking their vows in a dusty street, they held each other close and whispered the words they had said countless times before, but that never lost their meaning. I love you. I love you too. Always and forever. Two blessings that had become a multitude. A love story written across the wild Nevada desert, enduring as the land itself. The end came peacefully for both of them, years later, within days of each other, as if neither could bear to be parted from the other for long. They were laid to rest side by side in the Winnemucca cemetery, under a headstone that reads simply, Ryder Fletcher and Grace Vinson Fletcher, beloved parents and grandparents, two blessings that multiplied. Their children and grandchildren gathered to mourn and to celebrate, sharing stories of the couple who had built a life from nothing, who had loved fiercely and completely, who had shown them all what true partnership looked like. The ranch continued under James's careful stewardship, and then his sons after him. Lily's great-grandchildren walked the same halls where she had learned her letters. Rose's descendants carried her adventurous spirit into new territories and new times. And every year, on the anniversary of that day in July 1882, when a stagecoach had rattled into Winnemucca carrying a desperate woman and a frightened child, the family gathered at the ranch to remember where they had come from, to honor the courage it had taken to start over, to celebrate the love that had made it all possible. The story of Ryder and Grace Fletcher became legend in Winnemucca, passed down through generations. A reminder that sometimes the greatest blessings come in unexpected packages, that love can bloom in the harshest environments, that family is built not just through blood but through choice and commitment and showing up day after day. Their love had transformed not just their own lives but the lives of everyone they touched, rippling out across time and space, creating waves that continued long after they were gone. It was a legacy worth having, a life worth living, a love worth celebrating. And somewhere, beyond the veil of time and space, two souls who had found each other against all odds continued their journey together, hand in hand, heart to heart, forever linked by the love that had started with a mail-order bride, a hidden daughter, and a rancher brave enough to say that two blessings were exactly what he needed. The Fletcher Ranch still stands today, a working cattle operation run by the sixth generation of the family. The original house has been expanded and modernized, but the bones remain the same. The porch where Ryder and Grace spent so many evenings still overlooks the desert, though new chairs have replaced the old. In the parlor, there is a framed photograph, one of the first taken in Winnemucca after the photographer set up shop in 1890. It shows Ryder and Grace, Lily James and Rose, all dressed in their Sunday best, faces solemn as was the custom of the time. But if you look closely, you can see the hint of a smile at the corners of Grace's mouth, the warmth in Ryder's eyes as he looks at his wife, the way their hands are clasped together between them. Below the photograph is a small placard with a quote attributed to Ryder Fletcher, from an interview he gave to the local newspaper on his 75th birthday. People ask me if I ever regretted answering that advertisement, taking on a wife and a child I had never met. I tell them the only thing I regret is not finding Grace sooner. She and Lily were my two blessings that day, but they became my everything in the days and years that followed. A man could not ask for more than a good woman, a loving family, and land to call his own. I got all that and more. I got a life worth living and a love worth dying for. Those words encapsulate the story of Ryder and Grace Fletcher, a love story born in the Wild West, forged in hardship, and lasting beyond death itself. Their tale serves as a reminder that sometimes the greatest adventures begin with a leap of faith, that love can be found in the most unexpected places, and that family, in all its forms, is the greatest blessing of all. The mail-order bride who arrived with a daughter she never mentioned found not judgment but acceptance. The lonely rancher who had simply wanted a wife found a partner, a family, and a love that transformed his entire world. Together they built something that would last far beyond their own lifetimes, a legacy of love and courage and commitment that continues to inspire all who hear their story. And so the tale ends where it began, in Winnemucca, Nevada, in the vast and beautiful desert, where the spirits of Ryder and Grace Fletcher still linger, their love imprinted on the land they tamed together, their story woven into the fabric of the place they called home, their legacy alive in every Fletcher who walks the earth, carrying forward the values they held dear: honesty, hard work, family, and above all, love. Two blessings indeed. Two blessings that became a multitude, spreading joy and light across generations, proving that the best love stories are not the easy ones but the ones that require courage, that demand sacrifice, that ask us to be better than we thought we could be. Ryder and Grace Fletcher's love was such a story, and the world is better for it.